They're gonna ride a speedboat up a plunging breaker the size of the Golden Gate Bridge? Let's go! It's like watching the Rocky races. Of course his boat's gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Oh! Alright guys, we are reacting to San Andreas from 2015 featuring The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. Does this movie have all of the geological facts correct? My gut says no, but we'll have to watch it to find out. If you like this kind of content, give me a video that you want me to react to and I'll explain the science, at least from a geological lens. Let's do it. I do love a bit of Dwayne Johnson. Caltech.
Earthquake in Japan was considered to be one of the...
This is a classic thing that Hollywood does in movies about natural disasters, is they'll normally start off with something rather actiony, and then they will skip forward to a professor at a university doing a lecture on some sort of disaster. I suppose it helps bring a bit more science to the movie to make it seem a bit more realistic. But let's see what he has to say.
1964, a 9.1. The Earth shook for 5 straight minutes.
That is true. In 1964, there was an earthquake. I wouldn't expect them to make that up. And it was about 9.1 to 9.2 magnitude, and just under 5 minutes. But yes, correct.
There aren't any faults out there.
Any known faults. Now, if we can get there while the mini...
So that's not quite true. We do know there are fault systems out there. There is no connection between the North American and Pacific transitional plate boundary, which creates the San Andreas fault, and the Nevadan faults that exist in that area. There is just no connection.
Quakes continue. We can test our theory.
And if the magnetic pulse rate goes up before the quakes,
Then we're predicting them.
then we are predicting them. All right.
Okay, so first things first, just want to let everyone know that we still don't know how to predict earthquakes. This whole theory that they're talking about with magnetic pulses and swarms of earthquakes occurring beforehand. Yes, you can have swarms of earthquakes that do come before a main event, but usually it's the aftershocks which are sort of where you find most of the lower swarms following a major earthquake. It makes a nice Hollywoodized script, but we're not quite there yet in being able to predict earthquakes, and quite frankly, I don't know if we ever will. Have you ever noticed that with these natural disaster films, there's always like a relationship issue? It's like either the mom and dad are split and this poor kid is in the middle, like split between two parents. 2012, again, 2 split parents with a kid, or 2 kids, a kid, whatever. This movie, 2 split parents, a kid. The Day After Tomorrow, while they weren't split parents, they weren't exactly in love with each other, were they? Yeah, interesting.
It almost literally follows the Colorado River, which is a natural deformation event. And geologically, deformation events mark boundaries.
Okay, so that's not inaccurate. Usually, you will find large bodies of water over spreading ridges, example being the Red Sea. That will be eventually a spreading ridge. There's a big body of water there. And rivers in general do try and erode down the places of least resistance. And faults and large linear faults across landscapes offer that in a way. But in this particular scenario, where he's trying to connect the San Andreas fault, which goes up that direction, to the Nevada faults that are apparently over here, there's just no connection. They're purely glamorizing this for Hollywood.
No. Under the table. Drop cover and hold on.
That is correct. Extremely important. If you are in an earthquake safety is what you need to follow. You want to drop, cover, and hold. So in this case, they went to a desk which had cover and shelter above. This is perfect. This is what you want to do. So 100% love it. Good advocacy for earthquake safety. Okay, right from the get-go, you just saw that massive wave go through the crust over the city. You wouldn't get that in an earthquake, especially not this earthquake you get from the San Andreas Fault. They are depicting an earthquake here, which firstly isn't geologically possible with the San Andreas Fault. And I'm sure in the movie they'll show all the land breaking up, which is, again, not what you have with the transform fault, which is where you have the plate abrading and moving against each other. Only in places where you have plates separating or colliding will you get some massive deformation, and even so, it wouldn't happen on the scale that is happening right now. I mean, sure, even if this is a 9.6 or whatever it is, which again is not possible on the San Andreas Fault, most buildings are made to withstand earthquakes these days. All of the destruction you're seeing here is purely for CGI effects. It's not going to be like this. And I know these guys are like focusing on like downtown San Francisco, which is only like 2% of what all of the people in the area will be feeling with the earthquakes. And it would not be as bad as this. Would not be as bad as this. The destruction is completely nonsense. It would not be like this.
You need to see this.
What do we got?
Can I just say that they did a really good job at making him look like a geologist? I'm just going to put that out there.
That even though it's happening here in California, you will feel it on the East Coast.
Okay. Complete nonsense. The East Coast is so far away, a 9.5 would not be felt, even if it was a 9.5, right? So that's just complete nonsense. Again, they're trying to make it dramatized. There is no way that that would happen. Okay, so the fact that Dwayne Johnson in this part is saying you need to get to the side of the stadium, that is not what you do if you're already outside, right? Considering all these buildings are falling and toppling, right, you want to get to as much open space as possible where you can sort of see what is happening in your surroundings so you can make a decision to run or hide or take shelter. By you sticking to the side of a wall on the outside of the stadium, you have nowhere to go, and if things do fall from the roofs, etc., you are pretty stuck. The only time where you go and stand next to pillars or walls is when you're inside the building, because they're usually the places which have the best support for the actual roofs and things above. Yo! They're gonna ride a speedboat up a plunging breaker the size of the Golden Gate Bridge? They all have the same idea. They all want to surf this wave. Okay. And their boat's fastest. Yo, look at the size of that. Look at the size of that. Let's go. It's like watching the Rocky races. Oh, of course his boat's gonna make it. Of course his boat's gonna make it. We're gonna make it. Oh! Man, they just go over the crest. They just go over the crest. Okay, so I'm going to pause it with these two beautiful people above me, right? The San Andreas Fault cannot physically create a big tsunami like this. It's impossible. It's a transform fault, and even in the north, where it does touch towards the offshore environment, it will not have and even if it does, so the San Andreas Fault actually does connect to the offshore environment up in the north, right? But it is a transform fault, which means it slides, which means that it can physically not create or displace enough water to create a giant tsunami like this. The only way that a tsunami could form from the San Andreas Fault is if the earthquake itself triggered off a submarine landslide, which will then displace water and then push it towards the shore. That is, again, it's possible, especially considering there's a 9.6 earthquake, but it's highly unlikely, and especially one this size. Now, this was completely for dramatic Hollywood effect. It's not possible. But one thing I am pleased with is that they didn't just make this big wave, one big crest. Like you can see, they are now higher above land because when a tsunami comes in, it comes in like a tidal wave, right? It doesn't just come in as like a wave with a crest and a plunging breaker. It is actually a tidal wave, which means all the water is level behind it, which is quite cool. Okay, well, that was San Andreas, and I would give it a 4 out of 10 because they did have some aspects of the geology right. They did speak well to earthquake safety and things to do in some aspects. Again, Dwayne Johnson was wrong when he was talking about people going to the outside of walls. But they did get some of the aspects right in terms of the geology. They did speak right to the fact that fault zones do exist in Nevada. They do exist in San Andreas, but they don't connect. Again, that's wrong. And the idea of predicting earthquakes, again, it's not true. We can't predict earthquakes yet, but identifying swarms is something that we can do to indicate whether an area is active, dormant, or non-active when it comes to earthquake activity. So we can use swarms and earthquakes to sort of make that correlation. The amount of damage to San Francisco and the surrounding areas from a 9.6, 9.5 earthquake wouldn't be as bad as that. A lot of our buildings, especially after the previous San Francisco earthquake, which like essentially flattened the city, a lot of the buildings are made to withstand very, very large earthquakes, and there just wouldn't be as much damage. And the way that they inferred the San Andreas fault was wrong. They implied that it was stretching apart and pulling apart, almost like this crustal section of North America was pushing away. That's not what it is. It's a strike slip fault. They got the direction of it wrong as well. They made it left dextral, which meant it was coming down, where in fact San Andreas fault goes up. And again, the tsunami just wouldn't happen. So they did it for dramatic effect, the crescendo, the end of the film, but it just wouldn't happen. But yeah, it was a good movie. It's a good watch, right? It's a classic saving the family in a natural disaster thing that they all seem to make these films about. But yeah, 4 out of 10 for me, just because there wasn't much accuracy in it, but there was enough where you could get the message of earthquake safety across. If you enjoyed this video, like, comment, share, follow, and let me know what other ones you want me to react to.